What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back. It is, what is it, Wednesday, February 15th, and welcome back to Around the VLA. This is season 3, episode 5. We're trying to make this a weekly thing, me and Vince, while we are in the middle of 5 consecutive weekends of VLA volleyball action, which is ridiculous. So we'll certainly get into all that. My name is Rob St. Clair, live from Chicago. That is Vince Sanzuki, the VLA Director of Operations, live from suburban Phoenix, Arizona. Vince, welcome back. We just did a show last week, but there's a lot of volleyball to talk about, my friend.
Yeah, it's been an exciting weekend for sure. And then obviously we got another big weekend coming up this weekend over President's Day. So a lot of stuff going on right now. So it's great VLA volleyball all the way through.
Yep, VLA volleyball is alive and well. 5 weekends in a row is pretty ambitious. We're 2 events down, 3 to go. I'm pretty happy with how it's all gone so far. So let's dive into it. We finally got the East Division kicked off this past weekend. We were back at the Mohegan Sun Casino in Connecticut. Big shout out to the New England region of AAU volleyball for having us up there. One of their Grand Prix events. Great crowds as usual. And another year, the same usual cast of characters in the East Division. And once again, we see Team LVC walking out of a regular season event 4-0. What else is new?
Yeah, I'll tell you what else is new right here is that we talked about both balance and force. Trying to gain a little ground on LVC. It's kind of a common theme with the East Division, and here you got force at least getting a point. Better
True.
off than they were last year. I mean, not to rip on their efforts because they're out there working hard. They're putting up battles through and through, but they're just not closing out sets. They're not closing out matches. And but the fact that they were able to grab a point means they're better off than last year. LVC 11 points last year, only 10 points this year. LVC is gonna, I don't want to say cruise because they got their work cut out for them, but they're gonna make the playoffs. Let's just say that.
Agreed.
Yeah, and balance is doing what they do. They're beating force. They're battling with LVC, getting a 5-setter again, and they're putting themselves in a good position also to again compete for that potential championship near the end of the season.
This is remarkably similar to last year's Connecticut event. It was the same teams. It was virtually the same schedule. We had the Bounce versus Force match on Friday night, then 3 matches Saturday, 2 matches Sunday. Very, very similar to last year in a good way because that event is awesome. I really enjoyed being there. That casino is like a city. It's really fun to be at, and the crowds are great. And New England AAU, those are great people. And but funny enough, it's basically the exact same result. You said like last year LVC 4-0 with 11 points. This year only 10. Other than that, pretty darn similar. I'm still now there's new characters on every team. Obviously, no team is exactly the same as they were last year, but the team identities do feel exactly the same as those 3 teams did last year. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%, and they're going to continue to be that way for a little while until force or balance really grab maybe a kid that graduates from college or something. This is going to be a pretty similar matchup through and throughout the duration of this division for probably the next few years. LVC is just reputably does a good job of fielding a really good roster early in the season. They even with them having some of their guys playing overseas right now and whatnot, and they'll have an exceptional team near VLA Cup time.
Yes, they will.
But at the same time, they do a fantastic job. Hosley does a fantastic job staying undefeated. By the way, probably one of the only players to be undefeated, starting every match that he's been in. But again, LVC does a good job of fielding a really solid roster that is just one step ahead of Bounce and Force. And I think that with this division, of course, they're both, kind of chopping away at LVC a little bit, grabbing a point for Force, one less point for LVC this year. But where Force really, I think, needs to make that next step is they need to take down Bounce.
Agreed.
They've done it once, but for Force to really be a huge factor, which makes this race a little bit different than, for example, the Central race, is that Force is going to have to beat Bounce, and they'll beat LVC once or twice, but really to put themselves in a position where they can really grab a bunch of points from the VLA Cup, grab a bunch of points from the East Division Cup. They have to really keep it a lot closer of a race in their division. And I don't see that happening quite yet. Again, Force is going to do great in both of the cups, but it's whether or not these division cups or division events, they are able to grab the points they need to really put themselves in position to make a playoff run.
Yeah, that's exactly how it kind of went last year for the Northeast Force. They were new to the league. They were still learning how it worked. They went into the first event in Connecticut 0-4 with 0 points, and then it was just an uphill battle to even come close to making the playoffs after that. And they actually did come decently close because of a really impressive run at the VLA Cup, but it was too little, too late. And now the Force knows that they clearly did make adjustments with the roster. They brought in a lot more bodies that really helped. They were definitely missing Tim McIntosh, the outstanding libero who's playing overseas, but the Force, in my opinion, was the best overall defensive team out of these three this weekend. They dug so many balls. Their dig stats were phenomenal. I actually had Data Volley next to me during the broadcast, which was amazing, and could see dig numbers for the first time kind of all season. And Force's defensive numbers were incredible. The thing was, they didn't have a big banger they could chuck the ball to in those situations when they did dig a ball to throw it up to a guy and try and even take a swing, not even score a point, but even have a swing. So many of those balls that the Force dug, they were given back over as free balls. And if they can make that one turn of the corner to turn those digs into actual offense, even if it's out of system offense, I think they're all of a sudden going to be a pretty scary team because they're honestly not very easy to score against.
Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to is just being able to have that one guy,
Yep.
the go-to guy. And there's a lot of teams throughout the league that have that issue, and also some teams have that guy. Typically, it's an opposite. They'll have that guy when Nick Hunt, returns, which is why I think that I predict them having really good success at the VLA Cup. Typically, again, a good defensive team mixed with a strong right side that's very dependable is a team that is very deadly. So Force will have success down the road. It's whether or not they can do it against Bounce, or even steal one against LVC in this next event in a couple of weeks.
Which is only in 2 weeks. That's the thing, is I don't know if that's enough time for them to figure it out and kind of dig themselves out of the hole.
Right, and it's probably not, honestly. It's really up for Force to decide how much the adjustments that they're going to make going into that event. But if things kind of stay the way that they are with this division, there's a good probability LVC will just continue, stay 8-0. Bounce probably be dead even again, and Force maybe they can grab a win, but it really just. They need to step up a few things here or there just to get level with this division.
Yeah, their offensive numbers overall on the weekend were just not good enough. I would say that they're competitive in the middle with their middle attackers, but on the wings they're just not there yet compared to even Bounce and especially LVC. So to talk about Bounce a little bit, I was impressed by them this weekend. It was a lot of the usual cast of characters. They had a couple new middles, but everything else was pretty similar. And it was still very standard Boston Bounce volleyball. They do get Brad Borsay from the Northeast Force. That helped, kind of another big out of system banger. But their roster management strategies were interesting to me because I wouldn't say they ever put their best 7 players on the court at one given time throughout the weekend.
Yeah, and that's another thing too, is that roster management.
Yep.
It's one of the things that Iceman's struggled with. We've talked about them quite a bit. LVC, whatever reason, they just do a great job of making sure that their guys are ready to win matches. Where I feel like sometimes teams have a tendency to go, oh well let's spread the playing time around, maybe rest a guy they shouldn't. And that's just one of those things that experience of managing your roster, especially bouncing. I mean, they bring so many guys,
so many bodies.
And which is great. You need that. You need to have that, 12, 14 guy roster that you can kind of navigate and play the right guys at the right times. And really it is, you do just need to pick and choose when you're going to have that matchup where maybe Bounce does. Hey, we gotta get one from LVC. Let's play our best seven here. If we're going to take one off, maybe the second match against LVC, we take that one off. And play some other guys. A match that maybe they do give away one to try to win the big one. I don't know. I don't know what's going on the Bounce coaching camp there, but just my opinion, if they're going to try to dethrone LVC, they need to look at another tactic other than just trying to throw a mediocre team at them every single time.
Yeah, and that's the tough thing about having so many bodies, and like mediocre isn't the word that I would use. It's just not consistent and not optimized, like I would say. Like their best possible lineup, I would probably say like Vautrin Borsay on the left, Greg Woods on the right, Colin Ritter setting, any libero. They've got a couple good ones, and then once they get a couple middles back, like Kaufman, Ferraro, Stephen Moy, like none of whom were there this weekend, any two of their normal starting middles, like that team with those three wings, especially Vautrin, Borsay, Woods, that team could beat LVC. And I think that was most of the team that got close to beating LVC on Saturday night, but they didn't put that particular group out there at the same time for long enough to stop LVC from going undefeated. And that's kind of the same old story we've seen before. Now Bounce is less dependent than most teams on guys who are overseas. I think their only guy is Neil Ferraro, who is a baller. But when he comes back, he'll help the middle. But a middle is a middle. There's only so much impact that they're going to have. They've got to figure out how to optimize the guys that they have. They've got a bunch to get the most out of that group. Strategize depending on their schedule, depending on the matches, and they're going to host an event in Boston in 2 weeks. They need to go better than 2-2. Now that they're in position to make the playoffs right now, but to put the rest of the league on notice that they're better than a middle of the pack team, they need to go better than 2-2 at that next event.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing too, is we're kind of recognizing the chemistry that they have out there. And really, I do like Ryan Love as an outside with Vautrin.
Yeah.
I think that combination is pretty good. Ryan Love with Borsay, I think that there's some experience that needs to go into that to try to make that, really a potent and capable lineup. But I mean, that's kind of with a lot of teams. You're going to get those where, for example, LVC missing Jordan Vari. He's a guy who, has a certain connection with certain players and he plays better with better setters. And so, I guess just my point with that is that Bounce really just needs to figure out who are these guys, what's the combination that's going to work, and, and putting them in the position during that event to make them successful, and it may come down to, maybe LVC doesn't, play a certain guy or there's a certain matchup that works for them, and maybe that's what it's going to take. But at this point right now, I just don't really see Bounce figuring it out at this point until maybe at a later time or maybe a weaker LVC lineup. Do I see them really taking any matches off of them?
Yeah, I think their best chance to do it will be in Boston in 2 weeks because that event is Friday, Saturday. Sometimes Fridays are tough to really field a great lineup, and Boston's got home court advantage. They're gonna have the easiest time fielding a really good roster at that event at home and in a Friday, Saturday match situation. So if when they play LVC on that Friday, whatever time of day it ends up being, that I think is going to be their best opportunity this year to grab one from them, and I'm curious to see how they do it. But to talk about LVC before I move on, it's remarkable how they managed to do this. They get two brand new wings. They get Nikki Smith, who had just the week before and played for the New York Lost Travelers in San Diego. He comes back and plays for LVC, both at outside and libero. They only have three outside hitters total and no true liberos. And they bring Cameron Beans in, they bring John Lutz in, they bring back Dave Evans, and they still go undefeated. It's remarkable how somehow Heisley finds just a couple guys here and there. They are not overwhelmingly deep on the wings, but it doesn't matter. LVC goes 4-0 again. There's something about that identity that is just impervious to roster changes. It's really remarkable.
Well, another huge factor that you haven't pointed out yet, no one's mentioned him yet, but they
Is
do have the
Joby
MVP,
Ramos.
Joby Ramos, out there, and
Yeah,
that guy, he is just remarkable. I mean, you watch him play; he is all over the place all the time. He can score points when he needs to as a setter. He gets the ball to his middles really well, and it doesn't matter which middle it is. I mean, he's got Cardi, he's got Witkowski, he's got Lance Rogers, and it's
Lance
just like
Keller. Yeah,
and really, in all honesty, I mean, I've watched all three of those guys, played against those guys for a while, and they're not just a cookie cutter middle where they need a little bit of a particular set to be effective. It's particularly Lance. I mean, he really needs that fast 31, and he can put that off speed shot away. And whatever it is, Joby is able to find those guys the right way for them to be successful, and that's something that really, I think he's really the key, because I didn't see the same type of team, the same LVC team before he joined last year. And before we expanded to the East Division, and Bounce and Force were legitimate teams in the East Division. LVC was playing against Iceman, and not doing well. They were competing, but they weren't winning matches. They were they didn't do great in the either championships in 2021 or VLA Cup. They did okay, but it was really when Joby Ramos joined the team that they really found that key figure to really carry the team. And I think that really, when you look at it, if you have a setter that is that phenomenal of a player, you can fill in the pins. If you have
yeah.
guys that can pass the ball, guys that can dig the ball, he's going to find the guys that can score the points.
That is absolutely right. Couldn't have said it better. A setter of that caliber makes all the difference in the world. And I also think that Hosley does a really good job of finding guys who are physical enough and skilled enough. But that LVC team has to have the highest average volleyball IQ in the league, maybe even more so than Rising Tide, who, like all the born and raised SoCal volleyball experience. Team LVC's volleyball IQ as a group is amazing, and it really allows them to interchange parts and keep that identity consistent and create a product on the court, regardless of who they put out there, that seems like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. There's something about their team identity, their team culture, and the way Hosley picks guys with experience and volleyball IQ that just keeps that team destroying this division every single year in and year out. It's really amazing. And maybe Boston steals one from him in 2 weeks. Maybe Force steals one from him. I'm not going to pick that. I think this division is LVC's for the taking again.
Yeah, and that LVC IQ is much higher when CJ Dank is at home.
when he's not on the court. Could you imagine
he's not on the court? That IQ is way up there. So no, and I agree with that. And that's kind of been the talk of the East Division. It's not really much of it's a very safe bet to vote on LVC preseason, especially after they just went 4-0. Even with Force taking a point off of them, it's a very safe bet to say LVC is gonna run the division. At this point, I think a very safe bet to say that they will be in the VLA championship tournament at the end of the season.
I think that's pretty fair. I would kind of like to see them grab a cup tournament. They're hosting the one in Albany. We can talk about that much later, but that would be a nice icing on the cake for them, really establishing themselves. I mean, they're the defending champions. Everyone knows how good Team LVC is. So, Vince, now that we've got one event in the books for every division, we've had a Central Division regular season event, we had the West Division Cup, we've had an East Division regular season event. Everybody in Tier 1 has played matches, and we've got a decent enough sample size to take a look at the standings now. So, we've got the Rising Tide on top, and not only are they on top in points per matches played, but they're also on top with that one cup win. And the amazing thing about that is that cup win clinches them a playoff spot. There's only 4 cups on the year. And the only way that they don't win the West Division at this point is if you, Vince, if you in the Ascension win the VLA Cup and overtake them in like points per matches played in the division, which is possible but unlikely. And even in that case, the Rising Tide is guaranteed to make the playoffs. They're playing with house money pretty much the rest of the year because of that one amazing tournament that they had in Southern California. So Team LVC right behind them. They're obviously at the top of the league in match win loss, but in terms of points per matches played, it's actually not quite as good as maybe they would have even liked. Going to 5 twice does hurt them in that column a little bit. So they're not that far above Ascension 3-1 right now, 3-1 right now. Pineapple 3-1 right now, both 9 points. That's honestly pretty close. Those top 4 in terms of points per matches played are all pretty close through one event each.
Yeah, and looking right now, just backtracking to Rising Tide, particularly like you said, playing with house money, and they're going to do that the rest of the season.
Right.
They really were going. Their goal was the West Division Cup at this point. And obviously you want to win every single event match you play, but Rising Tide moving forward, you're going to see them lighten their load a little bit. In upcoming events, they'll bring a good team to VLA Cup. Who knows if they're going to bring the same type of roster that they brought to the West Division Cup. They're reputable to play a lot better and field a much better roster in California. But I think that really the story of Rising Tide is whether or not they go all in for some of these other events, which again, typical of Rising Tide, not likely to do. So you're going to see them probably, drop a match here or there with this one coming up this weekend, and probably with the VLA Cup as well, particularly with the strength of the tournament. Team LVC, they're completely in control of their division right now. They're going to continue to dominate that division, and like you said, they're strong candidate to winning the East Division Cup. I would not be surprised if they're undefeated going into the VLA Cup. And then you look at Ascension and Pineapple and where they're kind of at. I think that Ascension is going to continue to get wins. I don't see them going 4-0 before the Cup, but at the same time, I see them. I see us doing fairly well this weekend. Pineapple is a wild card in my opinion.
Totally.
Really good. They looked really good in their first event. The Central Division Cup is such a stacked tournament, so deep. Obviously, you got Iceman nipping at their heels. You're going to have Sweet is going to play much better. They played phenomenal last year in that Central Division Cup. No one's safe in the Central.
No,
I think with Rising Tide and Ascension, I think that they're the West Division's kind of has a good outlook for both of those teams. I think that LVC has got a great outlook for them, but as far as like Pineapple, Iceman, Sweet, that's that can flip flop in an event.
Yeah, it really can, and you're right. You're right about Pineapple, a total wild card, and Boston, middle of the pack. That's about where we expect them to be. Icemen underperforming their expectations a little bit, and then Sweet and Force bringing up the rear right now. Not as good as they were expecting through one event each. So it's not like the season's over. I mean, we've got one event for each division. There's going to be a lot of movement still, but some of the positioning that's already being done in the standings is going to influence some higher level strategy stuff for the rest of the season, especially the Rising Tide. I think that's huge. I think you can expect their level to drop kind of significantly. Definitely this weekend. I think their team this weekend is going to be good, not great. We'll talk about it later. VLA Cup, whatever. I mean, they'll have the Long Beach regular season event at the end. That's a home game for them. I'm not even sure if they'll throw all their eggs into that basket, but when it comes championships, I think they might, because they've cemented their spot in the playoffs. They can do whatever they want the rest of the season and show up to wherever the VLA championships happens to be and try to win a title. I think they are going to be a wild card to throw wrenches in the standings the way that they're likely to drop down in terms of match win loss going forward, because they've got that one cup win, how massive it is. So with all this, Vince, it's time for me to debut something that I like to do once we've got a little bit of volleyball played for every team. I like to power rank the tier 1 teams. I like to rank them 1 to 8. These are just my opinions. These are my opinions based on what we've seen so far. It's not really projecting like guys that are kind of going to come back from overseas, or like what I expect the playoff race to be at the end of the season. It's not really like that. It's just like kind of how I'm feeling about all the teams right now. So my first power rankings of the year, as of mid-February, one event for each division, look kind of like this. So I do have the Rising Tide at number 1, and I expect them to drop down from that, like I said. But the way that they handled that West Division Cup tournament was so impressive. And when they have all those guys there, when they are four, maybe even five outside hitters deep like that, when they have two, three great setters, when they have three great middles, when they win that tournament without even a true opposite, then they're going to get opposites later in the season. Like when I see that, and when I see that what the Rising Tide that I know is capable of, when they really throw all their resources at it, I put them even above Team LVC right now, and that's only because Team LVC at number two, uh, they don't have the elite wing talent yet. I think they're going to get that later in the season. Obviously, they're going to be ridiculously stacked in May and June and beyond when guys come back from overseas. But until then, I don't think they have the raw firepower to hang around with the Rising Tide if they were to play earlier in the season. Earliest they could possibly play is the VLA Cup, and I think they're going to be pretty different teams at that point. But I've got LVC just barely behind the Rising Tide right now. At number three, I've got Vince's team. I've got the Phoenix Ascension. Might be the highest I've ever put you guys, Vince, which is so congratulations, I suppose. The thing I like the thing I like about your team is the depth. You guys have more bodies, especially an outside hitter this year, than you ever have as far as I've been watching Ascension or even Arizona Sizzle before that. You've got bodies at center. You've got a great opposite in Brian Lewis, and then you're going to get Brandon Greenway when he's back from India. You've got Jesus at libero, who's amazing. You've got a great young middle and Jonathan Bishop, like, and I think that you, Vince, and your team have the experience in VLA Cup tournaments and regular season stuff that you do know what it takes to manage a lineup and manage a roster through the various events. So I actually like the consistency and the sustainability of Ascension's pretty high level. So I've got you guys at three. I've got the Chicago Icemen at four. And this is an interesting one. I think them and Team Pineapple, who I have at five, are both sort of wild cards. I'm really concerned about the Icemen depth until guys get back from overseas. Their outside hitter position right now is kind of a mess. They've got Kyle Overby and basically nobody else. So they're what they do in the Central Division Cup is going to be really fascinating while they wait for guys like Mike Mikolau, Matt Slavinsky to get back from overseas, and Will Kraft to get a free weekend from coaching. But I do think that their overall level is higher than Team Pineapple's. I think Team Pineapple overperformed a little bit in that first event. While they did beat Iceman head to head the one time, obviously. They split that series dead evenly. The Iceman lost to Swede is the only reason why they dropped in the standings further. I think Iceman's level at their average and at their peak is higher than Team Pineapple's right now. And I'm curious to see how that keeps up. I've got the Boston Bounce at six. We already talked about them. I think they're good at every position. I think they're deep. I wouldn't say that they're great in any position in any one area of the game or at any one level that we can predict at any point in the season. And I've got Swede at seven, Northeast Force at eight. I think just because I think Swede has the tools to get better faster than Northeast Force does. Northeast Force just comes down to bringing Nick Hunt in from Austin, Texas. If they do that, they're a top 4-3 team in the league immediately. If they don't do that, I think they're going to stay at number eight. So right now, through one event each division, that's my list. Vince, what are your thoughts so far?
Yeah, I agree with this list pretty thoroughly. And you look at this and it's kind of you got the 1 through 6 right there, which is the playoff teams essentially. And obviously this isn't the standings. This is just your power rankings. But the one factor I see in this is that I think Swede has, and I keep putting my money on Swede. I think they have a pretty big upside where Bounce is kind of who they are. They're going to be right there. I think Swede is a team that can go from 7 to probably 3 at the highest. But I think that they have probably the biggest, like I said, the biggest upside, even more so than Force. I think that adding Nick Hunt in there is a huge factor. But does that really? I don't think that really puts them at top 3. I think they could get to 4. But really, the more realistic one is Swede when they get some of their guys back from overseas. They get their setter back, their other setter back. Sorry. I see them really jumping a little bit. And so, at this point of the season, yeah, this is a very accurate depiction of the power rankings. Obviously, it changes week to week because, teams play, they perform, and some not perform, and, you go off of that. But just my opinion on where I could see teams going, I could definitely see Swede jumping up a little bit in this. And maybe even after VLA, the Central Division Cup, I could see them, maybe a 4 or 5.
Yeah, so the next time we'll do one of these is in 3 weeks because, like we said at the beginning of the show, we're through 2 weeks of 5 VLA weekends in a row. And the great part about that is the next 3 weeks there is one event in each division. So we're going to see more volleyball from every one of these teams in the next 3 weeks. We got Phoenix this weekend, we got Boston the following weekend, we got the Central Division Cup the weekend after that, the first weekend of March, and so after that tournament, I'm fascinated to see how both the standings change and how our perceptions of the teams change and how the power rankings shift around with that's basically 2/3 of the way through the season at that point. So that's going to be really interesting. Unfortunately for the fans, you don't have to wait very long to find out. There's still so much volleyball to be played in the very near future.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't say enough about the fans watching right now. I mean, our YouTube channel is blowing up at the
Popping
moment.
off. Absolutely.
It is fantastic. We really appreciate the support. Everyone involved, we're really happy that we could provide the product that we are with fantastic volleyball through and through. And again, this isn't possible without the support of the fans. So we really appreciate what everyone's doing for us and the growth of the league and our viewership base.
And thanks for watching the show like this at approaching midnight on a Wednesday night. We definitely appreciate you guys hanging out with us. So we see you guys in the chat, by the way. Ask us any questions or let us know who your favorite team is or whatever. We got AVB Network asking about the VLA Cup, which is going to be a ridiculous tournament in May. We had Out of System in the chat earlier, which is awesome. So thank you guys for watching. All right, Vince, last but not least, we got to talk about this coming weekend's event. I'm bummed that I'm not going to be there, unfortunately, but you and the Phoenix Ascension are hosting the West Division at the Volleyball Festival. The Volleyball Festival Fiesta Classic is always an awesome event. We normally get to play at least one of the days in State Farm Stadium, where the Arizona Cardinals play, but I hear that venue was a little bit busy in the last week, and we're stuck at the convention center instead, right?
Yeah, it was really hard, they said, for them to get Andy Reid out of the upstairs restaurant, celebrating still his championship win. No, congrats to the Chiefs, obviously. Huge shout out, actually, to Chiefs kicker Butsker, who is sponsored by Novice, our apparel sponsor.
That's right.
Super Bowl champion right there, and fantastic to have him, represent Novice, and then us be of the same breed for the most part there. So really happy that they won that one. I didn't really have any skin in the game there, but definitely was rooting for him considering we share the same sponsor. But yeah, unfortunately, we were not able to be at State Farm Stadium this year. But still, Phoenix Convention Center at Volleyball Festival. Thousands and thousands of juniors players there. It's going to be a fantastic event, and we're really excited to put that on.
So yeah, it's the same regular season event format that you guys are used to. 3 teams, 6 matches. We do give you a little bonus match in there, which is really cool. I love that Vince, you guys in the Ascension are scrimmaging the Phoenix Valor on Saturday afternoon. Valor, who had a phenomenal Cup Series tournament debut, getting third at the West Division Cup. That was really impressive. So it's cool that we get them in the mix as well. But since the West Division only has 2 teams in Tier 1 right now, we're going to do what the Central Division had to do last year, and that's bring up a different Tier 2 team for every regular season event. And for this one, it is the West Coast Brigade. So the West Coast Brigade, Jacob and Ken Martinez out of Costa Mesa, bringing the boys in to Phoenix to complete the field of this event. We'll see the San Diego Wave do the same thing with the Ascension and the Rising Tide in the Long Beach event later on in the year in May. But this is it. 9/11, 1 p.m. Saturday, 9/11, 1 p.m. Sunday. It'll be pretty easy to find you guys if you happen to be at the Fiesta Classic at the Phoenix Convention Center, or you can watch on YouTube as usual. So, Vince, what are you predicting? I mean, obviously you've got some skin in the game with the Ascension, but how do you think this weekend's going to go? Because it's kind of difficult for me to predict.
Yeah, it really is, because here's the situation is that President's Day weekend is a very difficult weekend for players that are also coaches of juniors clubs, right, to be able to really take that time off to attend this event to play. And you see that with Rising Tide. I mean, almost every single player on that roster is a coach, a juniors coach of some sort. Ascension has a lot of coaches as well. And so, shout out to Sam Haggard, who is getting married taking half of our starting lineup with him in the as in his wedding party or whatever you call it, the groomsmen or whatever. But I mean, it's one of those things where again, it comes down to the depth that the teams have, and we talk about depth throughout the entire season, and especially at the early stages of the season where some of these regular season events, you don't have your guys from overseas, guys choose to get married, whatever it is. Again, it is a pretty unpredictable event. Rising Tide is going to field a much better team than they had last year. No offense, Rob.
Yeah, they don't have to pull me off the commentary bench. I think they're going to have a better weekend.
It looks like Chris Cons is going to be coming out, and second team all VLA setter right there. In all honesty, Ascension, no matter what, has their work cut out for them whenever they play Rising Tide. It doesn't matter who's setting. I'm pretty sure you took us to 4 last year, so
I might have.
So it really doesn't matter that the rivalry between Ascension and Rising Tide is always going to be a pretty intense matchup. Really, I think the big wild card here is what team Brigade brings, because Brigade has shown that they can provide a fantastic team to a tournament. They've come out where they've really been a dangerous team, but then sometimes that they haven't. They really didn't do so well at the West Division Cup. I had a little bit higher expectation of them for that event, and they only came away with 3 points. Initially at the beginning of the season, I think that they were a heavy favorite, which is why they got the invite to this event, because of their consistency of bringing good teams to tournaments. But they really had a little bit of a drop off at the West Division Cup. And we'll see how they respond. Some teams, they have a tough tournament, they turn around and they're the most dangerous team in the tournament. But I think that they're kind of the wild card in this event is whether or not a Rising Tide Ascension maybe go 3-1 each, to possibly 2-2. It's one of those things we saw with Milwaukee Dive last year was so deadly, and the Central Division Cup or Central Division event too.
Yeah, they put that event in Louisville, and all those matches between them, Iceman, and Team Pineapple were bloodbaths. Like that can totally happen. Or if Brigade doesn't field a very competitive roster, they can easily go 0-4, like just like that, no problem. So I agree. They're the total wild card. I have no idea how to predict that. I could easily see them going 0-4. I could easily see them going like 2-2, maybe. Probably not better than that. And then I'm really excited to see both of the Ascension versus Rising Tide games. First thing Saturday morning, and then middle of the day on Sunday. Those games are certainly going to be pretty good. You got anyone that you can put on a microphone this weekend, Vince, while I'm not there?
Yeah, actually, we'll have Kaylee McCoy, who's actually one of our middle blockers for the Ascension women's team. She has been doing commentary on the Ascension Valor exhibitions previously in the season. She will do the commentating during all 7 of these matches. Ascension Valor is going to be playing an exhibition match, which is worth a point for Valor.
Right, right.
And so, we're really excited to have her involved, and she'll be doing the commentating and knows a lot about the league, knows a lot about the at least Ascension. She'll learn a lot more about Rising Tide. But as we kind of saw, or as we're talking about now, we're still kind of trying to figure out what's going on with Brigade. It's one of those things. I know the GMs in this league work extremely hard to make sure that they're fielding consistent teams. A lot goes into it, a lot of factors with just player management, who you can bring. And it's not as just black and white as, calling a guy up and saying, hey, come out and play. There's a lot of factors that get involved into it. So I know that Brigade's they're gonna come out, they're gonna work hard, they're gonna give us a run. But we'll see kind of where they stand, because this is important with the Tier 1 promotion for the West Division. If Brigade is able to grab a handful of points, they're in a good position to potentially be the next Tier 1 team that moves in the West Division. If not, then that door is wide open for a handful of other teams that are upstart teams like San Diego Wave, like Dallas Dogs. Colorado Kingsmen are going to be, showcasing and, Central Division Cup. There's a lot of teams out here all of a sudden, potential to be that next team. So Brigade can really they have an opportunity here to set themselves apart, or they're going to kind of fall back with the rest of the pack.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I'm trying to set up a little screen share here on the show so we can look at the tier 2 standings. Um, it doesn't seem to want to work very much. Let me see if I can do this, because you're right. The West Division, the West Division in tier 2. Oh, I think I did get it. Yeah. Yeah, look at that. All right, so you should be able to see the tier 2 standings now, and you can also check these out on the VLA website. Yep, that looks a little bit better. So this is the West Division. Hopefully this all fits on the screen decently. You've got Ruckus and Emil at the top, who have cup wins in their history, but they have expressed little to no interest in being promoted to tier 1. I mean, Ruckus was given the offer and they chose to stay where they're at, and then they chose to restart in a way as Team NV. So Brigade right now, of the teams that seem like they are intending to work towards promotion, and remember that the target in the West is only 50 points, Brigade is actually in the lead right now. But if they go to Phoenix and they take like 3 points or less, then the other teams like a Valor, like a Wave, maybe even like a Bay Area Dimes, if they're ready to move back up that quickly, Dallas Dogs, like all these teams who got a decent number of points in the West Division Cup, they're definitely rooting against Brigade this weekend, because unless Brigade gets 6, 8, 10 something points this weekend, these other teams still feel like they can catch that team in the standings.
Yeah, exactly, and that's kind of the thing, and why Brigade got the invitation to play in this as it is because of where they stood in the standings. And so it's really kind of up to them. The ball's kind of in their court whether or not they're able to put the team together to beat Rising Tide, to beat Ascension, and there's more points available for them with this event. They have a potential. Every single match is worth 4. If they go 4-0 and perfect
that's
throughout the
16 points.
They double their points total. Do I think that's going to happen? I have a lot of confidence in my team. We're not going to let it happen. But
good answer.
But the point is, the point is this is a really good test on, does Brigade are they able to beat 2 of the better teams in the VLA, or are they a team that is just going to continue to beat some of the bottom feeder tier 2 teams and just kind of maintain that points, the points here and there, and I don't think that they're going to be able to. I think that they'll maintain their competitiveness and cups and whatnot, but do I think that they're going to be a huge factor in the tier 2 race to get to that West Division promotion? I don't see it unless they can do well this weekend.
Yeah, I think this weekend is a huge opportunity for them, and might have a lot to do with that race because of that much lower 50-point target. So we'll certainly see how that goes. So let's look at the schedule one more time. All the matches here on YouTube, obviously, 7 games. That's a lot of volleyball, which is awesome. Come check out the courts if you happen to be at the Phoenix Convention Center or coaching a team or playing or whatever. If you're around, definitely come show up and support Vince and the guys who are going to be there. I'm bummed that I'm not going to be there. It's weird to have a VLA event for me to be watching it from afar, but I am looking forward to following along and pulling out some storylines from the West Division and coming back next week with another episode.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a very intense weekend. And again, huge shout out to Volleyball Festival. Really appreciate their contribution to the league, their support of Ascension particularly. They do a lot for us. So it's going to be a fantastic weekend, and I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, the Volleyball Festival, a great host. We love being at juniors events. The crowds are awesome. In Connecticut, it was the same way. Phoenix, I'm sure it'll be the same way. Boston, the weekend after that, will be the same way. Another juniors tournament. So we love putting the VLA product in front of a bunch of thousands of people with volleyball already on their mind. It's awesome for us. So that about it, Vince. You ready to run an event without me?
Yeah, we did it once before. We're gonna be all right. I think that will I be seeing the court? Probably not as much, because of that. It's just we'll see. But we've got some exciting things gonna happen this weekend for Ascension. A couple of huge bright spots in our future. And I'm hoping they play well, because I'm referring to some of the players that we got going to get opportunities this weekend. And and it's going to be one of those things. Tune in to the VLA channel to watch the West Division event too. And again, we're trying to make this a rivalry. It's been no question where that the Rising Tide Ascension rivalry has been pretty lopsided. They do seem to get the better of us for the majority of the time.
When they bring a proper team, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is that they need to consistently show up. And with some of the guys that they got, they're definitely taking this one more seriously than they have in the past, which we've really we got to be concerned about. We got to play it the right way, otherwise we could find ourselves at the bottom two of that VLA power ranking.
Yeah, don't be slipping down my power rankings, Vince.
So, yeah, exactly.
Nobody wants that. So
even more important is the standings. We don't want to drop on that. So
you don't want to drop on that either. Certainly, you don't want to disappoint the overlord of the power rankings. That's not what you want to see. So good luck this weekend, Vince. I'm looking forward to watching from afar. We'll be back next week on Around the VLA to recap that event, preview next weekend's event in Boston as part of 5 weekends in a row of VLA volleyball, which is just phenomenal. So you're in the right place here on YouTube to watch all the games this weekend. Tune in at the match times, like we said. Check out the website or Instagram if you have any more questions, and we'll see you next week on Around the VLA.
All right. Thank you very much.